which was the fault of my phone.
Okay, I believe we are live now. So, welcome to Panicola Podcast for Geeks. This is episode 3. And today we're going to be talking about to Sean Andrew Murray about world building and Gen Con.
Yes.
So,
Hi.
tell us, Sean, tell us what you do for a living.
Oh man. How much time do you have?
Try to keep it under an hour.
I am a freelance illustrator. I'm a freelance concept artist. I am a teacher. I teach visual development and illustration at Ringling College of Art and Design. And I'm also an independent artist. So I develop my own, create my own world. I develop my own artwork for that world. When there's not a global pandemic, I usually attend conventions such as Gen Con to promote and sell that world building project in the form of prints and books, things like that. I've done Kickstarter campaigns, Patreon. I gotta get my Patreon back up.
Everyone does. I think we're all falling behind on Patreon.
So that's me in a nutshell, and I live in Florida.
So it's probably nicer there than it is. Well, I guess it's not that bad here in Chicago today. It's about 75, but I'm hearing it's going to go up to 90. So, do you have any special promotions happening for Gen Con at all?
Yeah, I do. So if you go to my website,
put your link. You can remember the chat window I told you about.
Yeah.
Drop your links in there. If you're looking at Twitch, it's on the left-hand side.
So go to cityofgateway.com. There it is.
No. In the chat, it's all right. Everybody does that. In the chat for Twitch.
I don't have Twitch
okay.
open.
I will post your link for you. Give me a second here.
Okay.
Are you just pointing to your website?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's right on the front page.
I see it.
I'm not a Twitch guy. So like, is it a separate app or is it?
Just well, if you go to the link that I shared, it's gonna open up the Twitch stream. But if you don't, you have to mute it.
Oh, there we go. I can do that. Yes, I muted it. It's now muted. All right, so now I'm going to type it in city of www.cityofgateway.com. What? Oh, I have to log in. I can connect with Facebook though, right?
Do you have? You can connect through Facebook or you can connect through an email account, whatever.
It's going away. It says.
Have you never used Twitch?
No, I haven't. See, that's the thing. All right, you're gonna have to.
I got it. Hang on.
You can also do /store. People find it's right on the front page. The new piece called Fish Tank 2. I literally just finished it, and I have a sale going on this weekend for it. $10 off my normal limited edition print price.
Tawny got you, by the way.
What's that?
Tawny helped you out.
Tawny got it. Okay, thank you, Tawny. It's on sale for this weekend in honor of Gen Con. So that sale goes away on Sunday at midnight. In which case, get back up to the regular $5. But it's the new limited edition print, and literally just the virtual paint is still drying.
Is this dude shooting like? Are those ghosts coming out of his mouth?
No, they're just squid happen to be in the area.
Oh, okay, I see it now.
It scared him up. They're found throughout the city.
I thought when you showed it to me earlier, I thought that cannon was firing them out of its mouth, but I can see it.
Yeah, it could be that too. It's that part left to the interpretation of the viewer.
I'm kind of like, yes, so I had it's impossible to hear what he's saying for me. Huh.
Oh, really?
Make sure in the top right, there's a little cogwheel, make sure your settings are set to the right microphone.
Well, I only have one microphone as far as I know.
Hang on.
Microphone.
Desktop audio is up, mic is up.
Is that better?
It's like Sean's fading out. I don't hear that.
Weird. I mean, there are 3 options here, which is strange, but I only have one web camera with one microphone. Is that better?
Echo fading off.
Hmm.
See, these are the things I'm learning now with this stream. Like, everything's too new to me still.
Should I put the headphones on?
Let's
See
both put headphones on. See if that helps. Makes it easier for everybody involved.
All right. I've got headphones on now.
I'm working on it.
Okay. We'll get this eventually.
It's a learning process.
I can't hear you now. I wish I had some jokes to tell. I could try a different microphone. Can you hear me when I do this one?
Uh-oh, I think I broke it.
Now I can hear you.
Hold on. I think I broke it.
Broke what?
I can't hear anything. Uh-oh. Testing? No. This is awesome. We'll do this live.
I can hear you. You can't hear me?
Microphone is the Yeti, so you can hear me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. My headphones aren't registering for some reason.
No. Maybe you can take yours back off and I'll leave mine on.
Let's see. Let me see something. Yeah, they're not connecting. Hang on.
Professionals, folks.
I just realized everyone could see me messing with my headphones. Let's try this again.
I don't have any stories to tell.
Okay, can you hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
I think I'm just gonna run it without a headset for now.
Okay.
I don't know.
How's my audio?
Your audio sounds fine to me.
Okay. What does Tawny think?
Tawny, tech always humbled even the greatest professionals. Yeah, I don't know. These headphones are so finicky. When they want to work, they work. When they don't want to work, they're just whatever, garbage. Okay, she says sounds good now. So that's probably. So what do we learn here is next time we always have headphones on.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
So that's a lesson
that's what
there.
We've learned.
Yeah, that's what we learned. I'm guessing it's because I've got speakers and a microphone on without an arm, so I'm guessing there's an echo effect from that. So
that must be it.
So yesterday when I had my guests on, we were talking about the fact that we're not all at Gen Con this year. And
right.
Some of us were talking about things that we're going to miss because, a big part of Gen Con, obviously there's the art and then there's the show and then the games and all that for people. But for us, I think as artists, the big part is a chance for our art family to get together, right? It's a way for us to
right.
recharge every, these shows aren't just shows to us. We actually go in there and catch up with each other, and it's rejuvenating, and it's kind of hard this year, I think, because I haven't seen you guys. I've only seen some people at C2E2 this year earlier, and then nobody, right? Because aside from that, if there's anything you want to talk about with Gen Con, we were talking about I miss just being able to play games with my friends after the show.
Yeah, I think and I had posted this on Facebook a couple days ago that I've noticed that I haven't really been sketching in my sketchbook as often as I usually do, and I would try to figure out why. And I think one of what I sort of realized was that I typically don't sketch in my sketchbook when I'm at home. Most of the time when I'm sketching in my sketchbook is when I'm out and about doing things, or traveling, or hanging out at a restaurant or a coffee shop, or going to conventions and hanging out with friends, or whatever, like just being out of the house. And in a time when I'm not really out of the house that much, I'm not finding, weirdly, I'm not finding the motivation or the inspiration to sketch my sketchbook. I mean, the good news is that I've got a lot of, I've got a lot of material from previous sketchbooks and plenty of things that I can work on, and plenty of things I'm inspired to do, other than that. But there is something fundamental, I think, at least for me, about getting outside of my comfort zone, getting outside of just home
Yeah.
in general, that is an essential part of being inspired and finding ideas, finding inspiration, which is something I talk to my students about all the time. Like, you can't just rely on Google image search or
Right.
those kinds of things. Books are great. I've got lots of books.
Yeah, you can see them behind you right now.
There's online resources that are great. Online museums, movies, documentaries. All those things are also part of the mix. But there's a really big part of it that's just about getting out into the
Right.
world and having an experience. I call it, well, it's called experiential learning, right?
That's,
So
I mean, getting out and looking at things was something. I mean, I mentor with you on a lot of world building stuff, and that's one of those things that um, I didn't understand the value of it, or learn the value of it, I should say, until I actually took the time to do it. Like, it's not easy to say go around take. Remember back in the day, you had me go around and just take random photos of things. Like, everything can essentially be used
right.
somewhere. It's uncanny how you once you start doing it enough. Like, now I used to just take my phone with me. I mean, most of these phones these days have really good cameras, and I would take shots of things where I'd be like, this could be a cool object in this piece or whatever. Like, it started out being just like pipes and like trees and like, I remember one time last winter I went out and took photos of like ice melting, right? And I use a lot of that in my Triton piece. But then now I find when I'm out, for starters, I take a nice camera with me. I take my mirrorless with me because because I wanted like better reference photos. But now I'm starting to see more like I'm trying to think of how to say this right. Like, you start seeing like different things inside of um, the objects, not just, you don't see just a tree, right? You'll see something different in there that you can use in your piece. Like my homeworld piece that ship in there is literally a mix of like computer hard drives that I had sitting around, and like this like coffee filter thing that Nancy has that I used for
Mm-hmm.
the jet turbines, and there are jet turbines in there too. I had to look up the reference because I don't own
Right.
jet turbines, like,
Right.
so.
Well, and that's the thing is you find, sometimes it's not about finding, also not about finding the actual reference of the thing you're trying to do. It's about finding interesting shapes and shape
Yep.
language, which you can find in anything. You can find those things in nature. You can find those things in other kinds of technology or objects, household objects. I do an assignment with my students where they have to design a spaceship, or a vehicle rather, based off of household objects. So they have to find some interesting household objects, draw them, and then redesign them or reimagine those things as vehicles. And it's kind of an interesting, it can be simple objects, but they can be more complex, but they can't be too complex. And the thing is, I think there's a value that a lot of people don't really quite understand in simple shapes and simple design. There's so much of what we see in movies, although I think things are getting a little better. But for a while there was this trend in movies and video games for everything to be very complex. Everything was. The perfect example is the Transformers movies, where it's just like there's just a million moving
Yeah.
pieces, of glass shards, and there's no real like, and to some extent, some of the designs have like an overall shape language, but it's so complex that it's hard to sort of pick one character out of the next. So I think, when you find interesting simple shapes in nature or in things that you see out in the world, those things can, you know show up in your work. I feel like there's certain shapes that I tend to work with a lot. And then when I introduce something that's a little bit different, it makes it feel like a different piece. It makes it
Yeah.
feel like a different idea,
I mean, yeah, I mean, a lot of my pieces have the portal in them. That's my main.
Right.
I try to sneak that in there occasionally in everything. They're there. They're there. You just gotta look for them.
Hmm.
And then for a while I would also put in some mountains, and the basic idea was always there: portals and mountains, portals and mountains. And then I think one day I did a tree, and then the tree was the one that people really lean into now. So now I'm like, now everywhere I go, I'm like, oh, I kind of want to make another tree, but I kind of don't. you know?
Well, and the thing is, I mean, trees are a great example. There's so many different ways that you can design trees, and there's
Yeah.
so many different shapes, and there's so many different types of trees, and the language of them can be very, very different and unique. But I mean, to get back to the point about conventions, I feel like um, hanging out and talking with other artists and seeing what other artists are up to and what they're making, what they're creating, is also sort of an important part of um, continually being inspired, to up my game. Even in like like the setups for conventions. Me. I'm kind of behind the curve on a lot of things. And so when I show up at these conventions, I'm like, oh yeah, I really should have lights, or
I lent you
I
lights last year, I remember.
yeah, you did. So and so because that kind of stuff. Some people are really great with that stuff. The business side of things, and there's some aspects of that that I think I'm okay at. But there's other things where I need to see what other people are doing. To get a better sense of what I should be doing
I
when
mean,
showing up at conventions.
my setup is, most of you guys know what my setup looks like, but from when I first started my setup, it was something I had to, just the way, like what you're describing is the learning curve, right?
Yeah.
You see other people's setups and you're like, oh, that's not a bad idea. And the setup itself evolves. Like now my setup is like shiny. I don't know how else to describe it. It's bright.
Yeah.
I always wanted to lean into that. Like, my goal has always been that 80s like synthwave like pop. Like it should.
Mm-hmm.
I initially, I think you and I were talking about this. I thought about, we were joking about creating it to look like an 80s themed mall. Like
No, I really think you should try to find a way to incorporate some sort of neon lights. I
I've been
mean,
looking into like like I have the pro panels, and then I saw
mhm.
these like neon lights you can run that kind of like would stick to the walls. So I don't, I was thinking like, yes, neon, but no to, I don't want to like put neon around the pieces of artwork, but what I
No.
think I want to do is trace lines as if there's a grid following the
Yeah.
artwork, and then
Yeah.
that would be the neon color, and that would just add to the aesthetic of my booth
I
already.
think I
The
think it
sec
would stand out. I think it would stand out.
I think it would definitely stand out. I think the issue is my laziness to design something like I don't have a team of people like that show
Right.
up and put my booth together, right? I actually found out, actually my wife has cousins that do trade show displays.
Mm.
And they work mainly here in McCormick Place, but I think sometimes they do stuff for Gen Con too. They're the team of people. It's not Fern. I forgot who they are, but they show up and set up like booths, podiums, banners, balloons, whatever, what have you at your booth and leave. So in my head, I've been talking to her cousin to be like, is this something you guys can do? Because it would be kind of nice if I just showed up and my stuff is ready to rock and roll. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not that hard. It takes time. I mean, you showed up late to Gen Con last year, so you didn't see the couple hours I was in there tinkering. And the
I
problem,
always show up late.
it's, yeah, you're like a wizard. You show up when you're supposed to. I mean, it's there, man. I gotta use it. Um, but I love setting up for Gen Con, but I hate it too because it's like 104 degrees in that room,
Yeah.
and that's the other thing people don't get to see, right? You guys don't get to see, the fans don't get to see our setup and breakdowns when they
I don't
just
know why they
kill
don't
the
get.
AC on us, because
Yeah.
I think they have to pay. Somebody was trying to explain this to me. They have to pay per hour that AC is running, and when the doors are open for load in and load out, that's just a ton of cold air leaving. But it's like, can you guys not pay for an extra hour? I mean, it must be super expensive if they're willing to let
Yeah.
us
I think
slowly
it is.
roast in there.
I think it is. Yeah, I mean, I have this fantasy for someday the Gateway booth setup is going to look like the entrance to like an old world,
I want to see
shop.
the street, man. I want to see.
Yeah.
You were halfway there last year.
Auto glass windows and like curved windows, and it's like like an old Victorian storefront opening.
You need a 10x10 booth. Then you need those, like, it would be like Diagon Alley style, or like like just your, what's the piece with the city piece that I printed for you last year.
Right,
the market. Yeah, like you'd have like that style. Like you need to see some cobblestone tiles on the floor, and you were on your way there last year at San Diego with the light that you never turned on. I was just like, I was waiting each day. I was like, is he gonna turn that thing on, or is he just gonna be there?
Yeah, well,
you should have been like, it's bright enough in here. I don't need to turn lights on. It's daytime. But you didn't lean into any of that, and I was just like, come on, man. But I think the key is finding that kind of setup, but it's got to be something you can set up and break down on your own. If you didn't, I mean, having a team is nice, but that's extra money.
The thing is, what you're not realizing though is that part of this goal is for the IP to be so big that I actually I have a whole team working on this. So
that would be great,
I don't have to do any of the setup. I can just show up.
That's. Somebody asked me about that last week, and I said the ultimate goal for me would be that just to keep working on my art, keep talking about it like I am now anywhere I go, and then eventually just when we do shows, just show up, man. Just show up and be like. That
is the dream. I mean, because part of the problem with these conventions, and something I've been learning from Pete is that, it's like there are a lot of costs, and the costs are exorbitant.
Yeah.
If you have to have things stored, the drayage fees and shipping, all of these things. So it's like the more complex you make your setup, the more stuff you need, the more and more difficult it becomes to do either shows that are a long distance away. If you bring somebody with you to help you, then you're essentially doubling the costs of traveling to the convention, but if you have a big setup, you need help, and it's like,
depending on the shows, there's like Gen Con is, you can just wheel your stuff in. Like, I'm sure there's fees, right, for Fern to bring that stuff in, but like shows like, I did a show in Colorado last year. They wouldn't let us wheel anything onto the floor by ourselves. You had to have their team. You had to go to the dockyards with. Am I saying that right? Whatever. The docks.
Loading docks.
Loading docks. That's the word. And you had to we had to wait there till somebody showed up. Like first, they'll be like, go wait in this spot, and you're just sitting there waiting. And it's the time I spent just sitting there. I could have already hauled stuff to my booth, right? But they make me load it onto their cart, and then they drive it over there and make you unload it there. And we had to do this it was me and Andrew who drove out there, so we had to do this 2 or 3 times, so we got all our stuff out, and both of us were just like, we could have been done already,
right?
And then when the show's over, they have their fee. You have to pay to have somebody come take your stuff and take it out. But Gavin figured out there's a parking lot just around the corner with a freight elevator, and he snuck onto that thing and unloaded and left, whereas I went and had to sit in the marshalling yard to get a pass to leave. And then he kept saying, dude, just go back and do this thing. And I was like, why didn't you tell me sooner? And
and you remember the thing at San Diego where you can't go across the carpet with like a 2-wheeled cart?
Right.
It has to be 4-wheeled, or you have to lift it up.
It's got to be it's got to be wheeled, and it's got to have, it can't be solid. It's got to be the rubber or something, because they don't want you damaging their carpet, which I was just like, okay, you're just going to roll this carpet up when the show's over, so I don't understand.
Well, not the lobby carpet. It's the
lobby carpet. That's right. They had those plastic sheets laid out, I remember.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, right? So, like, when you're dealing with shows like that, and then they're like, you have to pay these fees to bring, and they're all different. So, like, and Pete's setup is a prime example of something that's crazy big, right? And he ships all his stuff in that giant crate.
Yeah.
So that's expensive. Like, I try to make my setup so I can wheel it onto the floor, and I can wheel it out so it's only dependent of myself getting it up and back down. And if I have an assistant there to help me, like when I do local shows, my friend Seth helps me, and he helps moderate almost all the stuff I have, my Twitch stream, my Discord channel, everything Seth helps manage. But he helps me at shows, and having that extra help is great, especially if it's. Did you lose audio? Nope. You're muted. That's what's going on.
No, I know I was muting it while you were talking because of some background noise that I wanted.
You were like, when you put your headphones away, you're like, shut up down there. Back on.
My son's playing Xbox Live with his friend in the next room.
I mean, that's the beauty of a live chat, man.
I know.
Like, your bookshelf could totally collapse right now, and we'd all be like, that just happened.
A hurricane might suddenly come this way and blow the windows.
I hope if a hurricane hits your house, you knew it was coming.
No, it's gone further east, so it's not even going to come to the West Coast. So.
We had like
Coast.
2 nights ago, we had a storm go through here where I literally walked down the street they opened up the Starbucks, and it's super busy there, so I never go there during the day. But at night, there's like nobody in there, so you can just walk in, buy a drink, walk out, and they have these like social distance tables set up that you're like 7 or 8 feet apart.
Yeah.
So my friend Steph and I were just sitting there, and like this giant gust of wind came through.
A microburst.
It was crazy, and like there was a trash can on the corner. I remember this paper bag came out of it and hit the guard behind me. And Steph was like, "Oh crap!" He's laughing. I was like, "What the hell was that?" And I look and I see this paper bag, and we're both like, "Oh geez, that came out of the trash can." And we started laughing, and the damn lawn umbrella that was next to us just flew away.
Yeah.
And we were like, "We gotta go." And like all this dust came in all of a sudden, and I thought there was a tornado coming into the city, which is it's rare. It would never happen. But it felt like it was so strong. And I was just trying to get back to the condo because I was going to, get to my wife and kid. And it just went away.
Yeah, no, it's called a microburst. There's a couple I've experienced. One of the more disturbing ones or upsetting ones, when we lived in Boston, there was this, we lived in an apartment that had a pool, or a condo building that had a pool. And I was in the pool with my son, and a microburst came through and knocked over a trash can, and all the trash went in the pool, including like some diapers.
Oh.
And everyone just like, instantly, out of the pool. It was like several days before they reopened it.
Yeah. All right, we got some questions. We got a question here. It says, "Hope you guys are doing well. For a young artist, would you guys say it's an essential thing to participate in the conventions? I live very far from USA, but I would love to go to Gen Con whenever things are normal again. Plus, didn't know your work, Alan. We'll take a better look after stream, but I love Sean's work." Hey, thanks. I would say whenever I talk to young artists who are just starting out, I always try to tell them to do local cons first.
Yes.
Because it's usually cheaper.
Ones that you can drive to.
Yeah, ones you can drive to. So you can just drive there, set up. It's probably going to cost you like $400 for a table. Have at least 8 to 10 pieces. That way you can get your feet wet. You can kind of gauge if you actually like doing conventions. There's, like, I did a lot of local ones when I was starting out, and the ones in the suburbs were kind of small, but there's still that level of stress of like, I'm here trying to get you to like this thing I created. And then I did C2E2, which is a big one, and that was actually the first one I ever did because a friend signed me up, and I didn't want to do it because I was like, nope. There's C2E2 brings over it's over 10,000 people easily. I think it's over 30,000 maybe, but it was my first show was stressful. I had 8 pieces, and I had like these coins I designed and stuff like that, but I realized I didn't hate it so much. I didn't like the crowd. I didn't like stepping outside. I don't like crowds. I don't like stepping outside of my table and walking around. The only thing that fuels that is the wanting for a collector's item.
Right. Oh, when I go to San Diego, I always, say I'll bring something back for my son. But every time I do it, like, I'm out there for an hour, and I'm like,
yeah. That's why you and I tell you though. That's why I'm always like, let's walk the floor before the show opens up, right?
Yeah.
Like, because as exhibitors, we have the benefit of walking the floor before the show opens up. So you can be like, I'm going to come back for that. And we were lucky last year where a lot of those exhibitors were willing to sell things to us before the show opened. Because, yeah, you were looking for the Pokemon stuff, I believe, for your son, right? Yeah. And they were like, yeah, here you go. Of course, we're going to make. But some people are very. Remember, I wanted to get those magic cards from Hasbro, and they're like, you need to come back when the doors open. And I'm like, it's super scary in here when those doors open. And I remember the worst. I think the worst thing that happened to me in San Diego was one year I went to the Supernatural booth to get a photo of those actors for Tawny, and I was pretty close. And then this crowd started coming in, and I was just like, oh my God, there's so many people here. And it was like being in the mosh pit at a concert, just trying to... And I remember as I was sneaking out, I was just holding my hand up and just snapping photos. And then,
and the thing is, I'm not against crowds. The problem is when you're walking through that crowd, everybody's going in a different direction.
Yeah.
And everybody has a different.
There's no flow.
Objective, and there's no flow whatsoever. So it makes it kind of difficult. I mean, to answer this person's question about like, is it important for up and coming artists? I think Alan's absolutely right. You got to go to ones that you can easily access. I mean, my first convention was Baltimore Comic-Con, and I could walk to it because I lived in downtown Baltimore, and I shared a booth with I shared a small 8-foot table with not a booth, a table with 2 other artists. And it was really crowded, but I sold a lot of prints. I mean, like I didn't expect at all like I was going to make money. But I actually did, and people were told me it was because my work stood out from everything else. So I think, not only do you have to start with conventions that are nearby, but you also have to maybe try a few different kinds of conventions that you wouldn't, like maybe there's an anime con, but your work isn't anime, or isn't specifically anime. Try it. I did a fairy convention once, and I did pretty well. I mean, there was a particular print I sold a lot of, which was like an Arthur Rackham, homage that I did. But it was an interesting audience, and so you have to try different audiences because you never know.
Yes.
Your work may not specifically fit the theme or the genre, but that might be a good thing because your work may then stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, I mean, like I don't do. I do okay at C2E2, but I do better. I do really good at Dragon Con. I do really good. I'm amazing at Gen Con because Gen Con people come there expecting the variation in art, right? But Anime Central, surprisingly, I do good at too, which I did it on a whim because everyone kept telling me to do it, but I'm like, I don't have anything that looks like anime.
I've never done C2E2. Is that specifically comics?
Yeah, that's Reed Pop owned. It's Comic and Entertainment Expo, I think is what it stands for.
Okay.
they do like Emerald City,
New York Comic Con or whatever.
Yeah, they do New York Comic Con, Emerald City, and it's here in Chicago. So like I've been trying to like, once you'll figure out which shows you do good at, and then you want to try to stick to those shows only. Like when I started out, I'm gonna go back to this guy's question. When I started out early on, I did all the shows like you were saying. Because I was like, let me get my feet wet. Let me figure out which shows work for me. And there was a ton of them that didn't. There was one year where I went remote. I was work from home. So when I was remote, I said, let me see. That means I don't have to go in an office for work, which means I can do more shows, which is not a good way of thinking, by the way. Because I did 19 shows that year, I think, or 20, something like that. And it was crazy. And I did a bunch of local ones. And I realized there were shows that my stuff just didn't fit. And the lesson I got from that was I basically wasted time at every weekend at those shows. Those shows I stood there for like 8 hours a day, not making sales, and in turn not making new pieces. And then once I dwindled it down to the core shows that I did better at is when a lot of my newer stuff started coming out, right? And that's when I actually started finishing the book, which I kickstarted this year, which you can get on my website if you want it pre-order. I will drop the link again. But yeah, do the small shows. Feel out if you actually enjoy doing the shows. The benefit of small shows is you get to go home to your own bed at the end of the day. You don't spend money unless you go party with the people afterwards. You will learn whether you like it or not. And if it turns out you like it, then you could slowly move into the bigger shows. Something like Gen Con, if you're thinking about doing Gen Con, I feel like you should go to Gen Con first for the experience. Same thing with Dragon Con and San Diego, and then go to do the show. So you get a feel for what those shows are like.
Or know people that have done it, so you can kind of get an inside,
Yeah,
the inside scoop on
I
it.
mean,
Because that's the thing is like the thing I hated about starting when I first started doing conventions was like not knowing what I was coming into,
right.
and not being prepared. And then, again, like you said, if they don't have the AC running when you're set up, and you're all nervous, and you don't think you have everything, and your booth kind of looks crappy, and then you're sweating like a pig, and it's about to start, and that's just I mean, and for me, that's just how I do things, and then I learn from them. I have to make mistakes. I have to like do things the stupid bad way first, and learn from it. I mean, I'll never forget the time I went to a convention. I forget where it was, but I was essentially trapped at the airport with all these like huge boxes that I had to stay with, but I couldn't get them like to the across the street to where the cabs could pick you up because there were no carts. So I'm like carrying things like one at a time.
Oh no,
up the street, and
that's stressful.
It was so stressful, and it was just doing it by myself.
I mean, I had those kind of situations. So you need to like. That's the problem with traveling to the show. Like I remember when I came back from Dragon Con one year, my luggage had completely exploded with all my artwork in it. Okay, the stuff that I shipped back. I had a great time at Dragon Con, and then I come home and I'm just like, the hell happened to my stuff? It looked like they threw it out of the airplane and the bag just exploded on impact. And on top of that, some of my artwork got stolen. So like it was a mixed bag of like.
I had the TSA cut into a box with a box cutter and slice right through it to open it up to inspect it, and then put some shitty pieces of tape back on top. Thankfully, the only thing they sliced through in the box were some crystal bags. But if I had artwork right there, and I knew I'd never put anything in a cardboard box, and again, unless it's it's padded and there's like space in between.
So this is something I learned. I think it was watching how Naomi packs her stuff. Like she had it like set up so like you can easily see everything, and like they could just take it out. Like they were all like in like individual compartments, I guess. So you can like see what you're looking at. So like when I pack my prints now, I have it in like a box. They can just open up, and they're like shrink wrap tight so they don't fly around in case this same incident happens again. But they'll still, if they have to, they'll cut the sides of it and fan through it, right? Like you're trying to hide drugs in there or something. It's like, come on. But I mark everything. I said, these are prints. These are playmats, You can't travel with playmats through TSA. They will go off like a red light.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if it's the smell of new playmats in the rubber, or
I mean, you can't go through the.
You can check it in. You can't go through the security. Every time I've gone through security with playmats, I've been pulled aside for them to check it, and it's a clusterfuck every time. So I learned to just ship everything. So nowadays I ship everything wherever I'm going. Like when we went to San Diego last year, I checked 2 bags with stuff and I just hauled them in. But now, Ron and Vanessa said I can ship it to their house.
We're giving these people advice, to do local and small conventions, but and I hate to turn negative on this, but a thought occurred to me. It was like, how many small local conventions are going to be left after this year? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, I don't know. This is the thing I don't know that much about. I don't understand what the financial structure or the sort of business structure of these conventions is. Whether it's kind of like a thing that is there an organization? I know ReedPop is a big company, and they have several events that they manage, and that's kind of their thing. But these smaller conventions, I mean, are they a thing that can just happen and then go away and then come back?
Yeah, I feel like a handful of them don't cost as much to run. Like the ones here, there's one called I don't know if it's still called MightyCon, but it's literally 3 field house. It used to be 1 field house in a suburb here called Wheaton, and then it evolved into 2 field houses, and I think now it's 3. And it's just in like you just rent the field house, so it's not crazy big, but it's big enough for a local show you can go there, you can sell your art. But it's mainly got comic stores, like vendors. It's mainly vendors, but you'll find a sprinkling of like a lot of us started at like Tim Von Ruden, I think, was at the first one I did back when they first started, like, you know, Von House and stuff. So like a lot of us started at the small ones and then involved. And yeah, I mean, I feel like a lot of these will go away because maybe they can't sustain it, right? Because they need to make, because you have to pay to for your spot every year, and then if you're not paying for it, but you're hoping that like the city or county that it's in has the, like McCormick Place right now, it's huge here in Chicago, and I don't think there's anything happening in there. And there's the old McCormick and the new McCormick, and the new McCormick Place is where the auto show is every year. There's like a food show, like with like appliances and kitchen stuff, and then there's
I mean, I guess there's not a whole lot else you can do with convention spaces. So
yeah,
like...
they just sit there. They're gonna turn into like those old, you know those photo. I hope it doesn't turn into a thing where it's like, you know, those old photos where like, here's a theater that used to be amazing and now it's shut down, and you get these amazing photographs, but you're like, man, it's kind of sad that it's gone. And I feel for like the Chicago theaters. I think they're trying to do shows and they're spacing people out.
Well, music. I'm actually mostly worried about like music venues.
Yeah.
You know, like concert venues.
Like the Metro and the Riviera here. The Riviera is a beautiful venue, and I really hope it doesn't get shut down over this. But I mean, what are you gonna do?
They're the first to close and probably the last to reopen.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who buys them. Like, there's a place. What's it called? I can't remember. It's right by the Riviera. There's an old theater there that got shut down, but there's rumors that somebody's buying it up again. And I'm like, cool. There's a place by where Nancy and I grew up called the Patio, where we used to go see dollar movies there when we were kids, right? And every weekend now, somebody owns it, because every weekend they'll do like, this weekend we're going to play Star Wars. And you're like, if it wasn't a pandemic, if you can guarantee me that you clean those seats and we can sit apart from each other, I would go watch Star Wars at the Patio right now.
I found that there's a drive-in theater near us that
drive-ins
we might try. It's kind of fun, you know.
So I thought about that too. My whole thing is, I would love to go to a drive-in, but what happens when you have to go to the bathroom? And then I'm like, then I have to go to this public bathroom that you're hoping that was cleaned well, right? Not saying I won't go if I have to go. I'm gonna absolutely go, but.
Well, the thing about drive-ins is usually they're surrounded by woods.
Come on, man. I mean, sure. Because like my friends and I want to do it.
Bring a bottle.
Yeah, or bring a bottle. Hopefully, you don't have to go the other direction. Because like I was thinking about, my friends and I want to do this camping trip, right? Like we do this. They want to do the stargazing camping trip in the next couple weeks, and I was like ready. I was like, yeah, man, that'll be fun. Because yes, you're in the woods and whatever. But then I was like, oh man, if I have to use a bathroom, it's gonna suck. To a degree, I can go in the woods, obviously, if I have to. So whatever, right? I'm not to bring it.
Let's move on to another subject, shall we?
Yeah, let's move on. So this guy was saying like a big part of the experience is stress, and it's like, excuse me, a big part is stress till you kind of have your rhythm down. Like, I won't lie, I get stressed out before every show until I've got all my ducks in order, right? Until I'm like, because like if like for me, for example, I've got prints, playmats, pieces of metal, and now I've got pins, and then I've got my collector's editions, and I've got like, you know, the more product you add to your inventory, the more stress you're adding, essentially, until you get better at, like, you know what to bring to each show, and you gotta make those checklists. So like I have like a list for every show, like this stuff sells well at Gen Con, I'm gonna bring these things. When you go to San Diego, I'm like, I'm flying, so I can't really bring my big metal with because it's heavy. Though now, you know, then you have options, right? Like now I might be able to ship it to Ron and Vanessa, and they'll bring it to me. But
I usually ship all my stuff to my sister who lives in LA.
Yeah, and you drive it in.
I fly in LA, rent a car, and drive down. Yeah.
But then, you know, like, excuse me, I have like banners. So I learned over the years to make my life less stressful when I travel. Like I used to ship the Flourish panel in a ski bag to these shows and then show up and set up, and they tell you it weighs 35 pounds, but when you're traveling and you're exhausted, 35 pounds feels like 100, and you're like walking through the airport with your carry-on bag, your suitcase full of artwork, and then this Flourish panel strapped to your back. And what I've done since is upgraded to a very light banner, which weighs maybe 10 pounds. 15 pounds tops. It's like carrying a bowling ball on your back.
Yeah.
But those are things you'll learn. But you also learn if it's too stressful. You can't. I know artists who are like, Eli is a prime example of this. Eli does not do shows anymore because it's just too much.
Well, and the thing is, you have to figure out what level of stress you're willing to take on. Like I don't recommend doing things the way I do, where I'm getting everything set up at the last minute, and then I don't have much time to breathe. I can see the advantage of getting everything set up a day or two ahead of time, so that when the show floor opens, that morning, you're not heading in there to try to like finish up or anything. You got it done the day before. And you can just relax, and then the morning of, you can kind of say hi to people and see what their setups look like and help
Right.
out if you need to or whatever. But the thing is that what you don't realize that you learn from actually doing these conventions is just like, again, talking to other artists and seeing how they solve the problem that you're going to come up with when you set up your booth. You're like, oh man, how do I do this? Or like, I didn't even realize that I needed X, Y, or Z
Yep.
in order to make it look like this. How did everybody else do it? And they're like, oh, well, you just get these things or whatever. You find out there are these simple solutions to things that, unless you actually see it and make the connection and have somebody tell you where you can find them or how you do it, it's not the kind of thing that you're necessarily going to like come across on the internet.
Right. I mean, that's why like I had made a list. I should update that list so people can go look at things, because there are things like simple things like lighting, right? Like you don't understand the value of lighting till you actually have the lights, and you're like, holy crap! Like
Right.
I should have been doing this from the get go. Like I mean,
Like, I'll give you a good example. It wasn't until I did my first convention that I realized that the reason why everybody's tables were black was not because that's what you're given by the convention. It's because everybody brings a black sheet, or a piece of fabric that they put over their booth. I mean, some conventions will give you something that's kind of neutral or black, but some of them, it's like a white table with like a blue and white stripe,
Yep.
like curtain on the front, and it's like, what? Like,
and it
oh, I
looks
didn't,
horrible.
like, yeah, you're right. Or blue and white stripe backdrop, and you're like,
Yeah.
and you do your first convention, like, oh, I didn't realize that I had to bring like my own, you know, black backdrop or whatever, and then you start thinking, well, okay, maybe I could do my own color, and that becomes
Yep.
my calling card or whatever. So
You
yeah,
gotta
it's
like,
all kinds of stuff.
yeah, it's like the primary things to start that you want are the stands to make your prints, to prop your prints up.
Yep, I didn't have those. I used boxes. My
Yeah,
first
I
one.
gave you stands. I remember. Black tablecloth. Um,
No, I had stands. By the time you and I started doing conventions, I just had different kind.
yeah, I used like the picture frame ones that we had around the house when I first started, and then somebody told me about the fold out ones. I think it was Pete, and I was like, oh crap, those are much better. Um, Black tablecloth, whatever color you want. Like I think Andrew uses like a magenta or a maroon because that's his theme, maroon. And then you don't have to, like, don't let anyone tell you have to get all this stuff right away. You get
Right,
the basics and then evolve if
right,
you want to evolve. Like you
right.
might not want to do the shows. You might be like, if you do amazing, like a lot of people like do great freelance and online. Like Eli does like a lot of commission work and he sells online with no problems and he's happy. And I kind of wish I had that sometimes because I'm kind of I get tired of traveling. I'm always like, it's like going to a concert. I'm excited for the concert, but then when it's time to go to the concert, I'm like, I don't really want to go to this concert. But
I'm
then
that
once
way
I'm
about
there, I'm
skiing.
having a good time.
I'm that way about skiing. Like, I like skiing once I'm up on the slope and I've got all the equipment on,
Right.
and I'm just going downhill. But everything leading up to that
Yeah.
moment is
Yeah. It's
stressful.
so tasking. Like
Yeah,
I tell people, when people say what's the worst part of the shows for you, and I say setup and breakdown.
yeah, yeah.
Like it's the only thing I hate, because with setup I tend to like tinker. I'm just like like anyone who saw me setting up my Gen Con booth last year, I showed up a day and a half early because I know myself. And I
Mhm.
spent, like the show's Thursday through Sunday, and I got there on Tuesday to set up, and then on Wednesday I spent the rest
Hard
of the
though.
time adjusting things. And people would walk by and be like, "You're not done yet." It's like, leave me alone. Like I have a process. And then you've seen my booth, man. You were next to me last year. Once I'm ready to rock and roll, it's like holy crap. People are like, I could see your booth from everywhere. It's amazing. And I'm like, yeah, thank you. Like part of me died. Part of me died building this thing, you know, like,
Yeah.
but then the breakdown, you know, you don't just willy nilly break it down, throw it all away. You have to like put it away in such a way, you know, like in the case of Gen Con, stuff went from Gen Con to Dragon Con. So like you'll build relationships with people. In this case, Brian Colin, who unfortunately couldn't make the call today, but he lives in Georgia. And he was like, I'll take everything here with me in my van. So when I got to Dragon Con, I traveled with less because Brian had it all waiting for me. That's just lucky. I just got lucky. But
Right.
I still had to take a quick inventory of what I had. So when I showed up to Dragon Con, I knew what was there already and what I should bring with, right? So these are things you get better at over years of learning. Like I've made a ton of mistakes. I've done shows where they were just crappy. I've gone to shows where I forgot my title piece. I did Gen Con last year. My printer didn't send me my Traveler, the keybinder, the main character to my series, was not in the bundle. And I was standing there like, uh-oh.
Yeah.
And, you know, I had them overnight stuff to me, but that's just, again, good relationships with a good printer who dropped the ball and fixed it.
So this year I was actually not planning on doing San Diego, and I was going to do Lightbox for the first time.
That looked fun.
So, you know, if all goes well, hopefully I'll be doing that next year. But I am going to set up for the virtual Lightbox that they have. And it's like they have I don't know if other conventions are doing this, but they have a 3D virtual space that you can move through on a web browser, and you can see virtual booth setups for each of the artists.
I think Gen Con has something like that. It looked, somebody in the Discord had posted like this. I think they designed like the hotel rooms and stuff, like the hotel, because Gen Con is basically connected through hotels and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
But not the booth. The idea of the booth sounds cool.
Yeah. So it looks like kind of like a booth with like like one of those trifold things that you get for like a science fair convention.
So you like just like walking around and looking at things and walking and looking at things. I'm curious to know if that'll.
And you can click on them. You know, you can click on the images, and it will link to a store.
I mean, if you go to the Gen Con Lightbox setup, no, it's not. It's called Light Room.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what it's called. I'll tell you. Looking Glass. They have a kind of like a global map. Yeah, thanks, Looking Glass. Yeah, they have like a map thing that opens up, a world map that you can like point at all the artists and stuff. We're all kind of clustered together, and that I think is fine. But this idea you're suggesting sounds like it's gonna bog down their servers, especially depending on, you know, if it's Gen Con level people looking at it. You're gonna be like, the Discord is I went into the Gen Con Discord the other day just to like see if I can catch up with people, and I was like, there's so much chatter in there, which is great. It tells me that people are still excited. Like I've done a couple online conventions this year, and I'm not gonna name them, but they were fine. They just were, you know, it's hard. We're all learning how to handle an online convention, so like, and the smaller ones are harder. It's harder to push them, you know, like. The first couple ones I did, I mean, the turnout was great, but I'm banking on, you know, Gen Con. I was like, this is Gen Con, you know, like San Diego. I don't know how you did for San Diego, but I did okay. But I don't think they did a hard push for something like this, you know?
Yeah.
Gen Con's got a Discord is like.
For San Diego, I missed the deadline.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You didn't get on that website with us. But like they didn't, like, I don't know if San Diego set up a virtual walkthrough like you're talking about with Lightbox. I don't know if they set up a Discord like Gen Con has here, which I think is brilliant because the way people are talking in there and hanging out, it's like you're catching up with people that you hang out with at the show normally, right? And that's.
Hey, in your Traveler piece, is that a face? The face on the helmet, is that a reflection, or is that the face that's inside?
No, it's inside.
Okay.
Does it look like a reflection?
No, no, it doesn't. That's why I was asking.
I was gonna be like, I don't want to tinker with that piece anymore. No, it's supposed to be. So when I created that piece initially, I didn't have a face in there. I kept it very neutral.
I didn't see that before.
Right, and then I think it was you and Ron and I can't remember the third person. My wife, I think it was my wife. She was like, faces and hands. People need faces and hands. That's how they relate to your characters.
Yeah,
And
look at all the top, Instagram posts. It's always
yeah.
fake.
So like Jupiter, for is a prime example, who didn't have a head initially, but once I put a head on him and gave him a face, people started buying that piece more. And I'm guessing it's because he had a head finally, and they can relate to him somehow. Um, this character, I didn't want to show 100% what he looked like, but I wanted also, he's not, when you can get the book again on the store, but you'll learn his story. He's not 100% human. Okay,
Yeah.
he's obviously looks human, but he's not 100% human. And I wanted to I was trying to design it so he looked a little not human and a little more alien and kind of that in between. But I didn't want to put so many details in there where you're like, that person looks like this now. I didn't want to give him a face yet, I guess, if that makes sense.
That's the other thing that conventions are good for, is that you get a good sense of what people respond to when you have your work out there, especially when you have it all like on one in one setup. People come up and it's always fascinating to me to see the pieces that people gravitate towards the most, or that they get upset about if they sell out, or and then the ones that they don't have any interest in whatsoever. And I never can understand it, or at least I don't always predict it properly. And I sometimes like a piece I'm really excited about and put it out there.
Yep.
Sometimes people are like, doesn't appeal to me. They don't even look at it,
But it's like a hit or miss, right? Like, because I've got the Beldrune, who's my main antagonist. Well, one of them, the spider, the arachnid guy. Mm-hmm. He doesn't move as well at most of the shows. People like it. They're like, oh, that's a cool looking piece, or that reminds me of XYZ. It doesn't really move though. But there's so at Origins, which I did last year, sold out. I sold out of prints, playmats, and the metal, and I was just like, what?
And maybe psychologists know these things better than we do, but there's a it's about what resonates with people, right? And it's not always obvious, or it's not always what you think, or it's not always what you are resonating with the piece, because you're tied to it personally,
right?
People don't always see it the way you see it, and that's I think something that comes with experience and time, and just like seeing what sort of things, and sometimes you'll never be able to figure it out. Sometimes
I don't think you're ever gonna get it, because it's like you can't figure out what's clicking in their heads when they see it, unless they tell you.
It's important to constantly experiment and to constantly put new work out. Because you never know what's gonna. I think that maybe that's my biggest piece of advice to artists in general is to not be afraid to put yourself out there, and conventions are a great place to do that. And in some ways, it's also kind of a safe place to do it, because you have other people around you, you have other artists around you that are doing the same thing, and you're in an environment where most of the people that are there at the convention are looking for something interesting and cool. It's not like if you were to set up at an outdoor farmer's market or something,
right?
You know what I mean? And people are there for completely different reasons, and they come to your booth and like, what the hell are you doing here?
Yeah, you're just this random guy in the middle.
Right, yeah. So I thought about that too. Down here in Florida, there's tons of these like art fairs all the time, but it's usually pretty like, chintzy, crappy.
You should try it just to see what happens. I'd be curious.
Yeah. I mean, it's a lot of like, paintings of the beach, or or shell jewelry or whatever, and so then I'd be, then here's occasionally there's a couple things that kind of border on kind of cool, but when you're at a convention though, like a sci-fi fantasy convention, people are there to find cool stuff that's in the sci-fi fantasy genre or whatever, and so you're in a pretty safe place to kind of like experiment and to see what kind of things people respond to.
I mean, also another piece of advice I can give is when you're at a show like Gen Con or Dragon Con, or if any like a convention with a lot of like artists, if you're looking for advice on your work, that's a prime spot to ask for a portfolio review. I did that a lot when I was starting out. I would just, if they have the time, they'll give you a review, and if they don't, they'll tell you, sorry man, I'm busy, or sorry, I don't do those, or whatever. Yeah, you gotta ask though, right? Like when my first Gen Con, I got a bunch of portfolio reviews. Like, you don't You don't want to really try to get them at the bar later at night because that's kind of annoying because they're trying to relax. They've had a long day. But you can essentially walk up to their booths and say, hey, if you have time, can I stop by for a review later? Another golden opportunity is something like Gen Con is if you want to get into like board games, which I still kind of want to do another board game. I'm half in and half out on it, but I went to a ton of those vendors and I asked for an art director and I showed him my portfolio and I was like, if you're ever looking for an artist to work on a game, and that's how I got Renegade. I did their game. That they were fun to work with, by the way. They're awesome. So I would do another game for them in a heartbeat. But my last experience was not as awesome, so I'm kind of turned off after that for a moment. But that's not to say they're all bad, But it's a golden opportunity to talk to like these big name companies. I've gotten a portfolio review from Yellow every year I've been at Gen Con.
Well, a lot of times those guys walk around. They walk around the artist alley, and you never know that it might be an art director there, in front of your booth looking at your stuff. I
mean, I got a stack of art directors from Gen Con last year.
Every time they'll come up and be like, you see somebody and they're looking at your booth, and they go away, and then like towards the end they come back and like, they introduce themselves. Hey, I'm so and so from such and such, and like so. Those things happen. I mean, the story I tell all the time is that if it wasn't for attending San Diego Comic-Con, I wouldn't have gotten to work with Guillermo del Toro. And he found my work at San Diego Comic-Con, and I didn't even realize it was him when he saw my work, because he was wearing a costume. He was wearing a luchador mask. Nice. And he just walked right up to my booth and was like, how much are these books? And, so I sold him the books, and he walked away and didn't even realize it was Guillermo. And so you just never know who's going to walk by your booth or see your stuff, depending on what the convention is. Obviously the smaller ones, less of those kinds of opportunities happen. Sure. But that's why you want to work your way up to those.
Yeah, the smaller ones are just stepping stones for learning. And the bigger ones are like, do you want to do this? Talking to vendors and gaming houses is, do you want to do that? Like when you're at when I was my first year at San Diego, so there's another thing. My first year at San Diego, I didn't have a booth that was my own. I helped another artist run their booth, and that's how I got my foot in the door. So that was my first time at San Diego. 10-year-old Alan was like, like, holy shit, you're actually here. But when I was there, what I had was I had a stack of postcards that had my Ancient Ones information on it, like my mailing list. And remember, you and I worked on that elevator pitch, and I printed out those postcards, and then I handed those out. I literally stood in the middle of the aisle at San Diego, just handing out postcards as people were coming in, right? Guerrilla marketing, I guess you can call it, And then the secondary thing I did was I had an iPad with my portfolio, and I went to like Hasbro, I went to like Gentle Giant, I went to Sideshow, I went to all those companies, including Funko. It'd be amazing to work for Funko, I think, because I love Funkos. And I'm still in contact with those art directors. I occasionally send them updates with new stuff that I have, right? Because you never know. They might. I think the problem with my style is they don't know where to use it, which is fine. But just staying in their radar is nice. Again, if that's something you want to do, like these days I kind of lean into wanting to work on my own stuff and less on other people's stuff. But if the right project came by,
I think the long and the short of it is there's opportunities for all of that.
Yeah, there's opportunities for all of that. Also, but also, like, a lot of these companies, I'm not trying to say this in a negative way, but they will try to lowball you on stuff. So you got to know, like, do you want to take that job?
That's why it's also important for your work to stand out and to be unique, because you don't want them to be able to just go to the next guy down the line, and if you say no, that's
right.
I don't work on deferment or whatever. I mean, like, you want them to come to you, and you want them to be excited about working with you. I think, not that if they don't like the terms that you have, then they'll just go work with someone else. And if that's the case, if they're just looking for any artist that'll work for their low ball fee, then you don't want to work for that client, right?
I mean, I had a vendor last year. I won't name them, but it's a gaming house. They approached me. I sat down with them at Gen Con. Then they called me and we went through the like costs. I sent them a cost. They were really offering me way less than I was asking. It was they were offering me like $3,000 for like an $8,000 or $9,000 project, and I was like, this is what's going to cost you, and I need this much time. It's going to take time. And
Right.
the guy literally said, that's cool. We'll just have our in-house artist emulate your style.
Right.
And I said, cool, man. I kind of wish you didn't say that to me, but I didn't get mad. I just said, hey, just so you know, it's kind of insulting that you said that to me. I definitely will not be working with you now. Like, thanks, and
Yeah.
he didn't seem phased, but he should have been. It's like, that's rude. So, occasionally you're going to get somebody like that.
Right.
And you don't want to work with company right there. It's like, I'm not working with you. Thanks. Bye.
And also, don't take everything that art directors say with a grain of salt. I've had plenty of art directors, especially when I was starting off, showing my portfolio at conventions, say, "Oh yeah, we totally would love to work with you," or "Your style's perfect for this," or whatever, and then like nothing. And you follow up with them later, and they're like, "Who are you?"
You're right.
You know.
I've been dealing with that for years.
That's why putting yourself in the position of power of being, actually, we were saying this at Gen Con, is that looking around at what people were doing, both in the quality level of the artwork and the quality level of the setups and the way it was being presented. I felt that in the recent year or so, the recent couple of years, that there's been a shift in this idea that the artists go to conventions to beg art directors to look at their work and give them jobs.
Mm-hmm.
To the clients or the art directors going to conventions to find really talented people and try to convince them to work for them. And I'm seeing that more.
And that's kind of nice, right? Because you should be able to just show up and do your thing, and they should come find you.
I find that to be a much more satisfying way to get work is when you have the art directors approach you versus you trying to convince the art directors, because it's like you've shifted the power structure and you are you're in the better negotiating position in that way.
I mean, yeah, I've been very much. I know I'm not like top tier for some of these artists that are being contacted, but like I said, I'm leaning more into doing my own stuff and less of their stuff. So when they contact me, I literally go through a process in my head of like how badly. So I'm trying to stay true to my work. That's correct.
How you get to be you get those offers for the bigger jobs is when you have a consistent history of creating work that you're passionate about.
Yeah.
However that arrives, some people are very passionate about the work they do for clients, and especially if they find the right clients early on, and it's just the kind of work they would be doing anyways.
Right.
And then that helps them to build a portfolio of work that looks like it was done passionately. But if that's not the case, then you just make your own work that you want to make for yourself, and you put it out there in various forms. And when people see that, they go, oh, wow, like this is great work. It's so unique. It's very different. Maybe we can find a way to incorporate it into what we're doing.
That's what like a lot of the younger artists, I tell them basically, I say, dude, just make art because you love making art, and then everything else will fall into place. But as long as you just keep doing what you're doing, and like, don't shift what you're doing for any, like, I had some company reach out and ask me to do animals in my style, and I was like, I've never done animals, and I don't want to learn with your game. That would be stupid of me to do. Not saying I can't do animals if I wanted to. I probably could if I tried, but it's just not in my portfolio. So you got to know when to just be like, sorry, thanks for thinking of me. I appreciate it. But if you got like a space theme game you want to work on, I got you covered there, So, okay, well, we're in a little bit over an hour now.
Okay.
So if you want to, once again, talk about any Gen Con specials you have before we log out.
Just that print. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you go to the bottom, you'll see a share button.
Got it. So this is the piece here. It's called Fish Tank 02, because there was a Fish Tank 01. I don't have Fish Tank 01 offered as a print right now.
I'm sharing your site right now.
But yeah, you can go to the site. This is the first thing that pops up on cityofgateway.com. And it's a brand new print, 18 by 24, limited edition of 100 prints. And once they're sold out, that's it. That's the only ones I'll sell at that size. So now, the next convention I will be offering and displaying more of my large prints. But for now, the website's the best way to get them, and they're printed on very high quality paper, and I think they look pretty good.
This looks good.
Each one's signed. So
I always like, and if you guys get a chance to look through Sean's website, yeah, exactly. I always like the little signage that you have. This one's only got one. You got lazy on this one.
Yeah, just keeping it simple on this one.
But like, if you like, a lot of your pieces have like all these little hidden like signs and gems throughout the thing. That's just it's kind of like a little treasure hunt.
How do I stop? Oh, there we go.
You just click it again and it goes away.
Also, I am working on, it's neither here nor there, but I've been working on a pitch for a graphic novel based on Gateway. The pitch is pretty much done, and we're going to start shopping it around. And
cool.
I think in this case, at least starting off, I'm going to attempt to go the traditional publishing route. We could do a whole show on.
We can do another show on that if you want. I didn't bring it up because I wasn't sure you wanted to talk about it yet.
Yeah. I've got that pitch and then another pitch potentially for a video game based on Gateway that I've been working on.
Are you going to promote any of this on your Patreon?
I don't know. I haven't decided how I'm going to go about this. So I probably should.
Andrew's been doing this thing where he's slowly revealing pieces of a digital comic on his Patreon. Like, yours is going to be a physical product, which is fine, but I feel like you could totally show little. You don't have to show the whole thing, obviously. You're showing teasers to it, right? Yeah. So if you got in the video game, that's a fun idea too. Like, again, another thing I didn't know you want to talk about, but I should ask you what you want to talk about before we start next time. I was under the impression it was just pretty.
Before we go, I'll share my screen one more time, and I'll just show the opening splash screen page for the comic. So there it is.
There's a lot happening there.
Yeah. Oops. Need to zoom in here. So a little cityscape there of Gateway.
That's cool. So yeah, like, are you gonna? Let's do this. Let's plan for another hangout, because I want this show to be a thing that I do once a week if possible, and we could talk about comic books the next one. Because the idea for anyone just joining us, because we're ending now. My idea is to do the stream weekly. I've had an idea to do a podcast, mainly geared towards our hobbies, and I call it a podcast for geeks because we're all geeks at heart, and a lot of our hobbies are very, people would call us geeks if they knew that, like, I build Gundams, I read comic books, I play video games, I do art, obviously we're going to talk about art a lot because we're artists. It's a mixed bag, but I want the show to just be lighthearted and fun. The business stuff, we talked about cons and booths stuff. Business stuff will come into play if somebody asks a question. I don't mind talking business. I didn't want the show to be 100% about business though, because there's plenty of shows like that. So, but yeah, people are tuning in now as we're about to leave. But thanks for chatting with me for an hour.
Yeah, no problem. We'll do this again.
Yeah, we'll definitely do this again. Hopefully we'll get a couple more like minds on next time, because it's fun to always have a mixed bag of artists talking about. Like, I want to get Eli in here next time because he's just into comic books just like we are, and all the stuff. But yeah, cool guys. So I dropped both links in there for our websites. I definitely have specials happening at Gen Con right now. All the stuff in the store, minus the book, is marked 20% off. Unfortunately, I can't discount the book because I would do a disservice to the Kickstarter backers if I did that. So, thanks for tuning in. Feel free to send me any questions you have. I have on Discord or Facebook or Instant Messenger, Instagram, or Twitter and Instagram are probably the best
lots of Instant Messenger.
Don't send me an Instant Messenger. I won't see it. So, all right, I'm going to take us off live. It takes, I think, 10 seconds to drop, but goodbye. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Appreciate it. Oh, AOL Instant Messenger. Yeah, I definitely won't see it there. Bye, guys.